Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Greetings and salutations, and a big warm welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. So what does the future of work look like? How do businesses prepare for a world where employees can work anywhere, any device, and at any time? And how do you secure that space? And today, we have a great conversation lined up for you. And I don't want to reveal too many spoilers. So instead, I'm going to simply get Mikhael Lindholm from Stratodesk onto the podcast, along with Nitin Sharma from Citrix, so we can discuss how to provide an endpoint experience beyond the infrastructure and much more. So a massive warm welcome to the show. I think we've never had you on this podcast before, Mikhail. So can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so short, the name is Mikhael Lindholm. I've been working with VDI or end user computing solutions for around 20 plus years. Started a long time ago as a Citrix system engineer for Finland, and then had several roles within Citrix for, I think, 15, 16 years. Actually, a fun curiosity to know, Nitin and I have worked in the same team, actually. So we've been teammates for a while there. But today I work as a solutions engineer for Stratodesk, and I'm just trying to save the world one endpoint at a time.
Love that. And of course, we have Nitin on the podcast today. Now, you should need no introduction now, as you are a regular speaker on the podcast. But can you remind the listeners with a little about you too and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Nitin Sharma, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Workspace Services, specifically under the Virtual App and Desktop group. I've been with Citrix for about 10 years, as Mikhail indicated. We've worked together in the past and excited to work together outside of the Citrix fold to see exactly, to build solutions out to kind of, help transform how people work. So when I saw his name on here, I was like, oh, I know Mikhail.
Love that. And there has been a lot of talk about working from home and working from home at scale. But when the endpoints go beyond the infrastructure, it can involve expensive things like duplicate Windows licenses and questions such as, are security demands different in the home office compared to the normal office environment? And many people listening today will say that Linux is the perfect solution, whereas others might say that users will struggle to adapt. But I don't think that's the case now. But Mikhail, can you tell me a little bit more about the advantage of the Linux ecosystem and the user experience, and maybe we can bust a few myths on that one.
So let me start with some of the reasons for Linux on the endpoint. So I think, you mentioned savings on the license cost there, and that's of course one reason. But I think the two biggest reasons is actually security and flexibility. So Linux, as you know, comes with a reduced set of services compared to the let's say mainstream PC OSs like Windows and Mac OS, and that leads to a smaller attack surface. And also due to the lower demands of resources from the device, Linux can run on almost any hardware out there today. So we have customers that have hardware that is more than 10 years old that can still be productive running our NoTouch OS. So I think that's some great ROI there. No, so as you said, a lot of people associate Linux with a text-based console and having to be a computer geek to be able to do anything with it. But things have evolved, and you can easily find a handful of Linux distributions today that are as easy to run as Windows or Mac OS. So that's going to help you a lot. But still, there are those times when you have to resort to the command line or a text-based editor to edit your config file and so on to really get what you want out of your Linux machine. You would have to be a little bit geek still there. Well, the good side with Stratodesk's, our own Linux distribution, NoTouch OS, is that we have a easy-to-use browser-based graphical central management tool, NoTouch Center, that you can use to do all these settings, so manage all the endpoints for you. So you don't have to know anything about Linux to actually get what you want out of these endpoints. And for the end user, we have a very, very user-friendly, simple graphical user interface that looks a lot like a kind of like a mixture between between Windows and Mac OS. So the end user doesn't really have to adapt a lot. If you know how to use a Mac, or if you know how to use a PC, you would be able to use a Stratodesk NoTouch OS machine. So that way you get all the benefits, with the security, flexibility from Linux, and without having to then be a Linux geek that edit config files and bootloaders and God knows what to get the machine going. And security, you mentioned security there as well, and that's a good point, especially when employees are going out from the office and go to the home office or cafes and so on. So when your employees are all internal, you could use company-owned IT devices, and they're going to work in a protected network, and it's easy to protect that because everything is kind of like one place, and you can make that secure and then protect it from the bad internet. Now, when users are remote, working from God knows where on God knows what, that means you don't control the network anymore. You don't control the device anymore, and that means that you have to change your security thinking and raise the security protection to the higher levels, from let's say devices and network to applications and data, and it has to be context aware. It has to take into consideration where do you come in from, what device, and so on. It has to be able to react to that.
Nitin, I'd love to bring you in on this topic here. I mean, can you expand on that approach and how that can work with the Citrix Workspace too?
So yeah, like from our perspective, we work with a number of vendors and technology partners like Stratodesk on supporting customer choice. So if there's a customer that decides that they are looking at running Linux-based machines, we want to ensure that we're supporting that capability of being able to deliver, the apps to that end user in a more seamless fashion, and sort of like ensuring that no matter the device that they're using, that they're actually getting that support or consistent user experience across various devices. We have a number of examples of customers that are leveraging, and I'm sure Mikhail is going to go in a little bit of detail as far as like one of the devices that run NoTouch OS is some of the Workspace Hub. So when customers are looking at doing hardware refreshes, they may be moving off of Windows machines, and they're looking at various options as far as what it is that they can have as endpoints for those users. We want to ensure that when we're designing the workspace, that we are capable and supporting that sort of choice from that organizational technology decision. So the Citrix Workspace is, again, Mikhail could kind of, he's really familiar with it over the years. Our intention when we're innovating and creating regular feature enhancements and updates are improving the security, the end user experience, but also giving that choice for that for that organization, depending on how it is that they want to deliver technology to their end users.
And for me, this is such a refreshing topic right now, because I think businesses of all sizes all over the world are now exploring new ways of working and new ways of doing things in ways that they never would have dreamt of 12 months ago. But just to bring to life the kind of things that we're talking about here, if I start with you first, Mikhail, do you have any use cases or examples of how you've worked with customers to provide an endpoint experience that is beyond the infrastructure?
Yeah, sure. And I want to continue on something that Nitin just brought up that I almost forgot about, is the Workspace Hub. Now, the Workspace Hub is an interesting piece of hardware where it's built by a third party, actually, and computing or ClearCube that brings the hardware, and then it runs with our operating system. What makes it really interesting and as an interesting option for our customers today is the fact that it's running on an ARM-based, very cost-effective device. So that's, let's say, in some cases, maybe a tenth of a desktop PC or a laptop, or even less. So it's an extremely cost-effective small device that does everything you need in order to basically bring up the Workspace app and connect to a Citrix virtual apps and desktops environment. So that's one of the reasons that a lot of customers looking at when they need to look at refreshing their PCs or finding PCs for their people moving from the home office, from the let's say normal office onto the home office. But that's on the PC refresh side of things. Now another thing I just come to think about as well, this is a joint customer that we have that had, like everybody else, in April, May last year, they had the need to move everybody from the office, to the home office. And it was a financial a customer in the financial sector. And when they did that, first of all, of course, as we talked about it before, they went out from the protected network out to the wild, let's say like that. But also, they didn't have, weren't able to provide them with company desktops. So some got some company managed devices, but some were given the let's say guidance to work with what they have. So that might be their home laptop, or in many cases their home laptop, or whatever they have bought as a bring your own device. So they were all managed, or most of them were unmanaged devices, and there's quite a lot of risks with that, because these unmanaged devices can be compromised, or coming from from a network that can't be trusted, or these, of course, unmanaged devices are being used for gaming. Of course, you need to give a device to the kids to do something every now and then, or whatever. So the IT department had a lot of concerns about the security risks in doing this needed move. That it was not a move that the IT department said. It was a, let's say, move that was dictated by the government. But using Stratodesk NoTouch OS and booting these devices, unmanaged devices, of a USB stick, the IT department was able to kind of like bring out if you wish, a virtualized, standardized environment, and that basically gave them a greatly reduced attack surface on the endpoint, and as well a easy to manage Linux endpoint, so that so it's easy for the user to set up and or control, and that means that the help desk calls were reduced, so that as well helped bring down the total cost of ownership. And this particular customer also had Citrix ADC and Citrix Gateway in place, and we were able to help them utilize that to build a specialized scan, so they can scan these devices, these Stratodesk NoTouch devices, and they could create a specialized security policies for this particular group. So that's some context-aware security for you there.
And it really does seem that there's this standard expectation for businesses all across the world now to work from anywhere, everywhere, and on any device. So, Nitin, is there any stories you can share about working with your customers to provide an endpoint experience beyond the infrastructure?
Yeah, so like what Mikhail was kind of hinting at, one of the things that the more aspects of use cases that I've seen are customers that are leveraging these workspace hubs that are running Stratodesk NoTouch OS. So one would be, I think there's an example of a customer, LGL Recycling. They were just talking about how the fact that they were able to deploy a workspace hub that connects directly to our Citrix Workspace platform. So the workspace hub would deliver, the various types of virtual apps or desktops. The key benefits that were able to come out of that was basically they were able to streamline some of the endpoint computing across like their entire virtual infrastructure. As well as their remote workers, but ensuring that there was no impact to the user experience. Even though the devices themselves are very low cost, and then from the spec, if you're reading the spec sheet of them, they don't really look like they wouldn't be able to deploy or run maybe like a high-end graphics intensive application. But that doesn't necessarily matter if you're deploying you're using Citrix on those devices, because all that back-end resources is all coming from the data center or where you're hosting your workloads. Some of the other, they're able to reduce their average time for updating endpoints by up to like 40 to 60 hours. But the main thing here is basically they're able to cut their PC costs by about $800 to $1,000 for the workstations, because you're now replacing high-end PCs with low-cost devices that are running the NoTouch OS or Stratodesk OS which is very low overhead, and you're also saving some licenses that you would have to normally pay, any sort of Microsoft licensing involved there.
And I think over the last 12 months, yes, many businesses have successfully now adapted to remote working, but there have been a few teething problems along the way. So now everybody's adapted to remote working. The question I've got to ask is, how are you helping to make remote working better and improve on that ground that we've made?
As you said, there was a lot of teething problems. I would say there's few. So if you the thing what happened when you basically threw out employees out from the office into the wild, and everybody who has kids at home and working from home knows what I'm talking about. They say IT support isn't there as it was in the office. If you were in the office and you had a problem with the network, or you had a problem with the application or whatever, you could call IT support. In the best cases, IT support were there with you and were able to set it right because it was a controlled environment. I think one of the biggest thing when you go out, out from the office and you go onto perhaps say unmanaged devices. First of all, the IT department has no clue what's on there on this unmanaged device. It can be, they can see, okay, it's a perhaps a Windows machine or a Mac machine, or in some cases even a Linux machine that maybe your son has been setting up and so on, and they have no clue what security patches or what other programs are they or things like that. So it's very, very challenging for the IT department to support this remote crew that is working on unstandardized equipment, and it's very challenging for the end user as well, because they will have problems with things that are very simple and kind of like given in a office environment. Network is going to work. You will have a printer. If you need to scan something, I mean, of course, a lot of things is digital today, but there are still a lot of locations and a lot of situations where you need something on paper or something needs to happen on paper and you need a printer. All of those things, the IT support were there for you, and you could get things solved very quickly. Now, if you're working remote, the IT support isn't there, and in the worst cases, they don't have even a chance to get onto your unmanaged device because that's unmanaged. It's maybe you don't even want to allow them to look at your device because it's not the company device. So anyway, but I think one thing we can do is by basically bringing this alternative with a USB stick so that they can boot this unmanaged device and bring the user environment onto a managed environment. Basically just starts up. First of all, the IT has defined, the IT is controlling, the IT can easily shadow and remote, and they can be there if something is wrong. And this environment, in the best cases, just boots up the Workspace app and brings you your Citrix environment, your Citrix virtual apps and desktop environment. That's all very much controlled and brings you just everything you need in order to be productive. So you don't have to worry about all these other things. But this booting from this USB stick, or if you install NoTouch OS on the device, basically brings the device into this controlled, secure, and nice to use environment. So that makes it easier and smoother for the employee to do his job. So that's kind of like plus on the user side. And then for the admins, it's so much easier to manage a standardized environment. And we have gotten a lot of praise for our NoTouch Center because it's so intuitive and easy to use compared to a lot of other management tools out there. So I would say, and of course, not to forget the security aspect of having a locked down proprietary Linux OS instead of God knows what running on your endpoint. So I would say there's a win for the user, there's a win for the system admins, and there's a win for the security department.
And it does feel that the speed of technological change moves at breakneck speed, but we seldom look back to see just how far we've come. And the reality is we've made tremendous progress, and working from anywhere is our reality now. And I'm curious, though, at Citrix, Nitin, how are you helping to improve on those remote working experiences that many take for granted, but also on this journey of continuous improvement still?
Yeah, I think so. Mikhail did a really good job there, and touched on one of the key things as far as like what Citrix was able to improve for a number of customers last year that had to immediately shift over an entire or a broader sense of their workforce to full-on remote. At Citrix, we've been involved with supporting secure remote work for number of decades, we've always talked about providing that consistent user experience to, depending on, no matter where that end user is accessing the Citrix Workspace or their virtual app or desktop on, whatever network or device. One of the key things that became really apparent for a number of customers, if they weren't using Citrix, they're using like a VPN solution, is when they switch to remote, is just the inconsistencies of various networks that users will be using, right? You now are no longer within the confines of the office building that could have, a stable connection. Now you have users that have inconsistent connections. Some are DSL, some are, cable. They have varying speeds. So the issue could be, how do you ensure that user experience is consistent? So we, with Citrix, we've improved our protocols. We have an HDX protocol that ensures that, that it's optimizing that network, that delivery of that virtual app or desktop, regardless of the network they're using. I'm just speaking it from a very high level, but it ensures that there's a minimal impact to that user experience when they're accessing that, app or desktop. If you're doing, and there's a number of other networking devices that are solutions that we have that ensures that it kind of overlays and ensures that user experience is enhanced as well. From the administrative side, for IT, if you're delivering apps and desktops to a device with NoTouch OS, you also have the visibility as far as like how performance is going. If there's any sort of user impacts to whatever is being accessed or whatever device, you can get visibility and drill down and sort of proactively mitigate any sort of issues to ensure that those users that are remote are still productive. There's very little downtime if there is an instance that they run into or they don't have access to anything. I mean, actually, customers have seen the value that Citrix can deliver when it comes to supporting a broader remote work strategy.
And Citrix and Stratodesk are hugely successful in their own rights. But one of the things that I like to try and explore on this podcast is how Citrix and their partners can actually complement each other. So a question I'd like to ask both of you is, what do you enjoy most about the collaboration between Stratodesk and Citrix? And what added value do you think you can provide by working together to solve those big problems for your customers?
So I think what I enjoy the most is, I've worked at both companies. So I would say both companies, we try to do the same thing. We just have these different tools. Citrix owns backend technology, networking technology, and to some extent a client technology that needs to sit on an operating system, but it basically stops there. And we as Stratodesk take that last bit. We create that operating system optimized to run the Citrix Workspace app and all its features. So, and that would, the bigger, that's from the technical side of it, but the bigger goal for both of companies is that we want to provide a flexible and secure works experience that enables users to focus on their job and not on IT issues. That's a common goal for both of us. And, so we add this I hate to say the missing part, but it's a very, very valuable part to the Citrix environment with this VDI Citrix optimized operating system that puts the eye on puts the dot on the I if you wish. And I would say that's the thing: security, flexibility, productivity. Yeah.
And Nitin, anything you'd like to add on how that collaboration enables you both to solve those bigger problems?
Well, Mikhail did a pretty good job of kind of addressing pretty much their higher level goals. The only thing I can add to it is just the thing when we're having conversations with customers that are new to Citrix or they're new to Stratodesk, it's just to provide them that idea of there's a solution out there that can actually provide what Mikhail is giving them. We're saying security, flexibility, and productivity, but also as a different sort of choice, because sometimes customers, these organizations may just think that they need to do a certain thing a certain way. They need to have a bunch of Windows machines, or I need to have a bunch of PCs, and this is what I need to have access. So it's basically like showing them a different avenue that shows them that, hey, there's different other options out there that can help address a lot of the things that you're looking for and security, making your organization more flexible, ensuring that users are productive. But also, there's probably like an inherent, cost advantage too. So a lot of times, I know business decisions, traditionally get made when they're looking at the dollar aspect, but then we do a good job of working together to ensure that there's a solution that is pretty cost effective, and it shows some ROI when it comes to if you're moving towards a decision where you're moving from one technology stack to another.
And that's such a great point you made there, how traditionally people and businesses have been used to doing certain things in a certain way, but that is changing now. And for anyone listening to our conversation that has heard about the advantages of Linux in the past, and just interested in exploring it further, can you walk me through how long it takes to get users up and running with Citrix Workspace in a Linux environment, and also what businesses can expect from that process and any complexities it might involve?
The good thing is we have if you want to use it, we have a cloud-based management solution. So you could instead of trying to bring up the virtual appliance in your own virtual environment, you can get it as a service from us. So basically, that means that it's there in the snap, and installing our Stratodesk NoTouch OS is very, very quick. And so, if you said it has to be a race from zero to production, I would say, it could be 10 minutes. But to be realistic, we've seen rollouts that, are done in a day to a couple of weeks. It all depends on the size and complexity of the environment. But it's very, very quick. Our time to value is one of the industry's best, if not the best one. And I think what to expect from the process, I think we had a customer just recently saying that, after they rolled out Stratodesk NoTouch OS, they saw a drop in help desk calls with around 80%. And if you think of if you have outsourced your help desk, you think of what a help desk call might cost you, you can calculate the savings there. So Nitin touched a bit about the savings that can come as a PC refresh, but it's also the savings that can come with with a better environment and through that a reduced number of tickets.
And a question I'd love to ask both of you, but before I do, I'm going to ask you to think about gazing into a virtual crystal ball and looking at the future. So do you think making remote working better is a journey rather than a destination? And assuming you do, how do you see it improving in the next 12 months and beyond? And Mikhail, I'll send that one to you first.
Okay. Predicting the future is that's something fun to do. But I think actually remote work will transform into this hybrid work. So they're going to be, a lot of people might stay remote, and they will have to. They like to do that, or they have to do that. I don't know, but they will stay. But there will also be this move back to the office. Some say that will never happen, and that's not going to happen. But we are seeing bigger organizations already, especially in the US, saying that they have plans on how they're going to return their people back into the office. So there's going to be this hybrid model of remote and office. And I think one of the challenges there, if your IT solution isn't up for this supporting this hybrid setup, and you have the flexibility that Citrix and Stratodesk brings, you're going to run into challenges. And there's another thing as well. We are seeing now, especially again with PC refreshes, we are seeing that the supplies for new PCs are low. So if a company needs to renew their PCs, they might be getting from their vendor saying, no, we can't deliver in the next 6 months. So again, we can turn these, take old hardware, 3 to 5 year, even old hardware, and put NoTouch OS on them, and we can get the users productive. So I think this remote work will transform into hybrid work in the future. That's my take.
And Nitin, presumably you've seen the same trends too. We're moving from remote working to hybrid working. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so Mikhail kind of hit on a lot of key points that are very true. I've had various conversations with organizations as far as how their approach is when they're coming back to bringing staff, whether or not they're bringing them into the office or a hybrid approach. I mean, our intention is to ensure that, whatever choose or whatever working model that they decide for their end users, to ensure that Citrix is actually able to support that, whether that's, they're going to be working from various devices, various types of, networks. And, like, for example, there's going to be a number of things where an organization may not, have the PCs that they need to have to support it in-house because they're, if they're doing a PC refresh, there's a PC shortage. A lot of times that can be, it can impact sort of the, the delivery of like these new office style PCs, or they're delivering a device to end users that need to work from home. So we're with Stratodesk and NoTouch OS, it's they could, instead of buying new PCs, they could just go ahead and, deliver these NoTouch OS to existing devices. And from a Citrix perspective, is to ensure that access to that virtual app or that virtual desktop is still pretty seamless, and almost seems like that user has a new PC. Again, like we're essentially delivering an app, a desktop from a backend workload, whether it's an on-prem delivery or if it's in some sort of public cloud. It's to ensure that user experience is not impacted. So it's just to support the ability of users being able to access work from wherever they are, ensure that there's no downtime or very little downtime.
And continuing that theme with one eye on the future and where we're heading to, the question I'd like to finish on is, what excites you about working together to improve remote working and exploring the art of the possible together?
Well, I think what currently just excites me is this. Well, basically, Citrix shifts with just away from just virtual apps and desktops into a more holistic view, with taking to account SaaS applications and other new application styles and so on, and also this whole thinking about a smarter these micro apps and all of that, and making that work. And especially, I'm excited about the new zero trust secure internet access solution from Citrix, and what we are working on at the moment to integrate those with NoTouch OS. So I think the key enabler here is our tight relationship, that working hand in hand and moving forward hand in hand and keeping each other up to date, and that enables us to bring solutions that are seamlessly integrated and ready to go for our customers. And that's what excites me the most at the moment.
And Nitin, is anything spring to mind on the kind of things that excite you about that road ahead?
Well, yeah, it's just as I indicated earlier, the work that we're doing together helps give those, those the technology decision makers that choice, that idea that there is a different number of solutions out there, that are outside your traditional way of thinking when it comes to delivering, apps to your users. So it's excited to kind of work together, specifically where we are ensuring that Stratodesk helps us deliver a better, an enhanced value, because when it comes to, talking about Citrix to a customer, they're usually in the middle of some sort of refresh or hardware refresh or evaluating solutions. So when we're positioning that joint solution together, like here's what Citrix and Stratodesk can provide you, where we're ensuring that the joint solution is going to be secure, flexible, and productive, and ensure that users are still have productivity without necessarily impact to security, and it kind of gives you that value.
Well, I've loved chatting with you today. And for anyone listening that would like to continue the conversation that we've started here, Mikhail, can you remind listeners of where they can find you guys online, and also contact your team if they've got any additional questions about how they could be utilizing anything that we've talked about today?
Sure. I mean, you can find us on our webpage, company webpage, www.stratodesk.com, from where you also, you can register for a free trial and get more information of our complete solution. And we can follow us on all the, major social media tools like Twitter, Instagram, and so on. And my personal email is Mikhael.Lindholm@stratodesk.com. If you would like to reach out directly, or then just generally, if you want to reach out to any of us, you can use info.stratodesk.com, and that's going to go to a common mailbox, and we're going to catch you from there.
Nitin, obviously there's Citrix.com, but is there anywhere else that you'd like to point people listening that they can stay up to speed with the kind of things we're talking about?
Yeah, you could probably get a lot of really recent information on what we're releasing from features and technology, features and enhancements on citrix.com/blogs. We have regular, Mikhail may even do a guest blog, and there's a number of information there that we talk about as far as what, if something comes out, it's going to be there, and sort of the demo videos and all the information will be available there. You could also reach me directly. I'm on Twitter at Nitin Sharma _1. Or, you can reach out directly at nitin.sharma@citrix.com if you have any other questions.
Well, there's so much I've loved chatting with you both about today, especially because I think for so long businesses were caught in that trap of doing certain things in a certain way, and they're now beginning to explore new ways of working and different ways of doing things. And we've already sampled remote working at scale, and now we're progressing again towards hybrid working. So many big talking points here, and a big thank you for highlighting some of those and joining me on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So many big talking points for me there, especially around the advantages of Linux and how easy it is to get up and running with Citrix Workspace in a Linux environment. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode as much as I did. But a big part of this show is not about me or even the guests, but about you listening and sharing your insights, your experiences, questions, concerns, and everything in between. So please email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com. You can connect with me on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Just look for @NeilC.Hughes. Nice and easy to find. Remember, you are what makes this podcast special and why there is at least one episode going out 365 days of the year. So please keep your questions coming in. And also remember, if you need help launching your own podcast, you just want somebody else to worry about editing audio files and all that stuff, or need help ghostwriting articles for your business, you can learn more about how you can work with me at techblogwriter.co.uk. But more than anything, I just want to hear your insights, your struggles, how you're overcoming them. And if you want to come on the podcast, let me know too. But that's it for today's episode. So a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.